business. We have already appointed Casey, and now we need to appoint officially Sam. What do we need to do other than say we've appointed them?
I believe you would just, as board members, say yea or nay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous. And just let's go around the table and I'll give names so that we, so that we all know who we are. I'm Jocelyn Jones. George. George.
Just said it's like-
I'm Jocelyn Jones.
Thank you, George. It's hard to go school. Kids at the school. Yeah.
Committee.
On the.
Jeff Baker, board member.
Me.
Board member.
Schaefer, board member.
And
Chris Martin's budget.
nice, welcome everyone. Our second order of business, we've gotten people appointed, is to, we need to elect a chair and a vice chair to run this. I do not need to be doing it at this moment. So do we have anyone who would like to nominate someone else or anyone who would like to be chairperson? I can be the chairperson. Thank you very much. Just what we like to hear. Is there someone who would like to back her up? Thank you very much. We appreciate your vote, Paul. I especially appreciate your volunteering. So from here on out, Madam Chair, the next order of business is budget message.
Which should be that first page and I mean your agenda. You're all right with that?
See,
Okay, so the budget for the fiscal year 25-26 was prepared in accordance with current laws and regulations and with direction from the board of directors. The overall budget as presented by the budget officer is in balance at this time and no staffing reductions are being recommended. First, the items in the budget I would like to draw attention to would be the new positions we're adding. Our high school population will grow significantly over the next couple of years. Unfortunately, we were able to add a new teaching position for this growing population. When I first arrived here at Union, we had many grade levels and subject areas that had multiple teachers, and I believe this will address the needs of our current population. The position will have a dual purpose, beginning with allowing us to add classes in science and social studies in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grades. In addition, this will be a position that will stay in the budget as we move into the next few years when our double up elementary classes enter the high school, allowing us to keep class size down as much as possible.
questions from anyone on that first paragraph? Chair, I apologize, but I just want to make sure that our new budget members kind of understand that you are an extra set of eyes and ears for the community to make sure basically that we're on task and that the school is on task. So Carter is explaining what he is proposing in this budget for how the school is going to function. So please, board members as well, don't hesitate to ask questions, but it may be easier to ask questions with each of these recommendations versus reading the whole thing and then trying to remember what to ask questions on.
So just a clarifying statement on that, which is a good time to add this, is our current 6th grade is at 35 students. And our 6th grade next year is proposed to be at 44. So that is going to be a big group of kids coming into 7th grade the next couple of years. And so we had to make some adjustments to prepare ourselves for that, to keep class size down. Because the recipe is pretty simple. It's a low student to teacher ratio, the teacher is going to be more. Any other questions? Okay, so second, we have decreased our maintenance budget due to one-time purchase of equipment. while still investing in repairs in our irrigation system, which we have identified as one of our major problems. In addition, we'll be replacing the floor in our Miller classrooms, as well as refinishing the upstairs hallway in the high school. This is very exciting, will be wonderful investment for years to come. The Hutchinson classrooms were done last summer, and so we're gonna match the Miller classrooms with the hallway from the work we did on them. And so it's much cleaner. It'll be very nice and last a long time. Any other questions on that? Okay. More positive information, we'll be able to complete the safety updates that were recognized by the assessment we had done in the past. This finished all the intercom and fire strobes that we have identified as needed to make the new system much more effective in all buildings. So the CTE building, the wrestling room, the student-based cell center, all the music room, all of those were added to the intercom and fire strobe system. The only exception is we have not added this fire strobes in the high school and the gym. We're hopeful to do this in the future, but currently the intercom is very effective in both of those buildings. So we made sure all of the younger grades, all of those had all of the strobes, but high school kids react and respond well to our intercom system. And so that's why we've not completed that project as of. Other areas, we as a district are hoping the state school funding does continue to increase. This will allow us to continue all the educational opportunities for students. The balance of the budget is impacted by the increases in employee salaries and employee benefit packages. This is where I have to be a little bit upfront. As we look to the future, we're noticing our large classes are going to be both in the high school in 26, 27, meaning we may have to make some reductions at the elementary level in the next few years. And I just need you to hear that. We may have to make some reductions at the elementary level in the next few years. I'm not very excited about that, but that big bubble of kids is moving into the high school. And so when those kids exit that building, we may have understaffed is one of the things we need to consider.
How many double classes do we have at the elementary right now? So how many, we have 2 kindergartens, correct?
Two first grades,
Okay.
and then it goes to Singleton, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and then 5th and 6th are currently, those are the big classes that are going to start moving to high school, and they're both done.
Okay, and so we've got the 5th and 6th coming in as big classes. We've got 2 years of 3rd and 4th that are smaller,
Correct.
then followed by 2 more large groups.
No, that we just have felt like the kindergarten and 1st grade, trying to keep those numbers as low as we possibly can in those classes makes us a better educational institution. And so keeping that class size low has been a priority that we realized when the current 6th graders came in and we divided them up. We saw a lot more success with that model, and so we've kept it on.
So K1, 2, 3, and 4 are all
About 25 kids per grade.
per grade. Okay, so that giant bubble is that 5th, 6th group coming in.
Coming into the high school, yes.
Got
Those are kind of, so like this year's 3rd grade class is 29 or 30 kids.
I say, yeah,
We would have to wonder whether we're gonna split that class.
yeah, and that's, it's gone back and
Yeah.
forth, like with families coming and going.
Yeah.
But they're not 44, yeah. Okay, another area to consider is the new administration, and so the impact to the funding for education and the overall state of our country's economy. So I don't have a crystal ball, but when you watch the news and you read what's going on, with our new president and all of these things, I don't know how that's going to impact the economy. And so it depends upon which article you read, like, is there a fiscal cliff and are we headed to a recession? Some people feel that, other people feel like, oh no, it's going to be great. I don't know what to believe. I'm just trying to be upfront that that could impact what happens the Union School District in our budget.
Just as a reminder how Oregon works, since we don't have a sales tax, it's only based on taxes coming in. And so if we were to hit a recession, our school funds drop dramatically with the economy, whereas in other states, that is not the case because they have a three-legged income stream where we just have a two. So that's what he's talking about here as we're getting into this. We just flat don't know what it's going to look like.
But the positive side is Oregon does have a lot of rainy day funds that they have been stockpiling. And hopefully the legislature decides to use those if we do get to a recession. So there, I just know, and so I'm just trying to be honest. So finally, with this budget as presented, we'll be able to continue the level of service that we're able to provide in this current school year, as well as fill new positions, continue to prioritize the maintenance of facilities. Finally, the budget presented allows us to increase our current service level, will give us the opportunity to adapt to the clientele that enroll in the fall and plan for future career options. So I know there was some negative in there, but I'm just trying to be in front of it and transparent.
Well, if any of us could predict what the government's gonna do at any given moment, we'd be clairvoyant, and I missed that class. So, is there any discussion? Okay, we need to, maybe right now, so Franklin, you should talk and tell us kind of what's going on.
So I've included this budget cheat sheet that it tells you the major funds, major type of money that we have. By far and away, the majority is the general funds, so we usually spend the most time kind of talking about that. Those decisions are driven by those class size decisions. We did reduce project money as we spent it. So we can go through it page by page if you want to, or I can kind of just hit some highlights. I didn't print any notes because honestly, the budget is almost, other than salaries and benefits, I guess we did settle on bargaining agreements and we're hoping to approve those at the board meeting tomorrow night. Rumor has reached me that we will probably do so. So that settlement is a 5% increase in the first year of a 2-year contract and a 3% in the following year. We did get hit this year. We refinanced our PERS debt, which you hear all the time in the news. We did that 27 or 8 years ago. And right at the beginning of my career, so maybe it wasn't quite that long, 25 years ago. That will mature in 2028. So our rates have been significantly lower than some area school districts, but that earning of the set aside money was not earning at a rate large enough to keep up. So this year we got hit with almost a 7% increase. And there's been a new set of legislation going through that there's going to be some rate relief on that. But it was really, on people who have been around a long time like myself, it was a 7.95% increase on my first. There's not very many of us, thankfully. So anyway, with that rate reduction, we're still looking at almost 7% increase in those costs. So a large majority of the $400,000 that our budget increased from last year coming into this next year is due to salary and benefit and PERS. And we reduced where we could. It was obvious that glaring, that we bought a tractor, we bought a TV, those are over. So we deducted that money out of the budget to allow for that growth. Also a little bit higher state school fund, but my caution is much more stern than Mr. Wells. He's an optimist. We know me, I'm not. I'll own it. What's happening is we have too much cash built up, and we've talked about it the last several years at these meetings. We needed to spend that cash, make it count while we could, and we did that. So as you go forward, and I felt like the salary settlement was very important because we want to be the school that recruits those new teachers. With the host of layoffs that we had this year and 3 new teachers coming in next year, we need to be attractive so we can retain those teachers. So it's going to put us in a position to do that, but at the cost of cash carryover. So you have to commit that cash carryover into the budget. And once it's spent, it's spent. It's no different than your checkbook. If you don't spend it all, then it goes into the next year and you can reallocate it. So we're not committing as much cash this year as we did last. It's 1.7 million some odd in this year's in the budget, whereas the year we're living in is 1.9. And that's a reflection of those expenses that we don't have to pay. So we're still, but the following year, I'm estimating, if I had to tell you today, we're only going to have 1.3. So that tells you we're going to have to reduce. We won't have to reduce the entire 400,000, but we are going to make some small reductions and changes. So that will come next spring. Welcome back. Beyond that, I organized these a little bit different for you. The first packet that you have that I believe is attached to the budget message is largely the district center, which is everything that affects all kids within the district. So it's myself, it's Mr. Wells, it's maintenance, it's all of those sorts of functions. And truly, we have not made significant changes. I will tell you, we still have approximately $70,000 that we budget for students to take coursework that we can't offer due to the size of our schools. So we pay EOU, we pay OIT, we pay for certain coursework that they can't get this year with some American Sign Language, some different things like that. So $70,000 is going to that, but that's plenty of money to be able to do that. Textbook money is the other thing that you're going to see right on that first page. There's a $15,000 placeholder there. I wasn't aware when I was building this of which subject was getting that textbook money, but we still do have $45,000 budgeted to buy textbooks. That's probably not quite enough, but it's still there. Do you care to go through this one by one, or would you like me to just keep moving?
My vote would be the highlights,
Okay.
whatever anybody else thinks.
Okay.
Yeah, those of you that are new, don't hesitate to ask questions.
So
You're not new.
Yeah. This first packet that you have is everything that affects K through 12. It's sort of the basically a lot of support services, except food service will get that. That's what that function is. And of more interest is the next packet, and it's the high school, and it's the thickest because it involves all of the teaching staff as well as all of the extracurricular. Does the high school need separate? Right,
Just the high school.
this is just the high school. Yes, the next one is the elementary school. And so
Does
we
the high school count 6 through 12 or
seven.
7 through 12?
And you'll see right at the top of that first page of the second packet, it talks about high school being center 001, general fund. And that 1121 number tells you that's middle school. So it's in general, grades 7 and 8. To be frank, I don't split their salaries by the 1/7 of the salary. I tried doing that, I can keep up. So it's, as we go through it, they're by subject. So if you get to the bottom of that page, you'll see English, and there's one FTE in that. That's one English teacher. And then you go to the next page, you'll see social studies, and that is a half-time teacher. Because that is our new position that will teach half-time social studies and half-time science. So there's been some shifting of the numbers if you see changes in those FTEs. Art includes music as well as regular visual arts. Health math is, I'll highlight always, and I have budgeted 1.0 in that math. but truly, they can't teach full-time math in junior high, there's not enough day to go around. So that's one of those areas where I put one teacher in junior high, if I put one in high school, to make my life easier. But, as you go subject to subject, you'll get to page 5. And that is where function 1131 is the actuals 9 through 12. And it starts all over again. The first portion of it is pretty general, related to some textbooks. It's related to substitute costs. It's related to, oh my gosh, this teacher forgot to tell me they were moving over on the salary schedule. But then it goes into the same things, subject by subject, so that you can see what we're spending on those 4 areas. In the high school, one of the things that happens that costs a lot of money is the supplies. You can't adequately teach certain things without sending them home with a product. Art being one, some of our agriculture and geometry and construction and woods and welding. So as you look through those pages, you'll see larger supply budgets in those. So for example, in the math budget on page 8 of that packet, there's $7,000 in straight up supplies plus some other things for a total of $9,000. And that is supply money to help with geometry and construction. I just will talk about really the higher ones. The art budget's fairly high, it's at 4,000 in the high school. And again, that's shared with music, although music just is once in a while a buy a piece of equipment, but it's largely music, that sort of thing. Health, PE, all of those are pretty basic. When you do have some allotment for second language. So currently that is Spanish, but again, we have the availability if a student really is interested in French, we can figure that out with our other funding. When we get to page 10, the number 55050, it's still called CAM, Cam was made 3 years ago, but it's industrial parts. So that is welding. And you can see that, again, that supply budget is $9,000. Again, probably not enough. Maybe they want to sell a few projects, maybe a little extra. Natural resources is 560. That budget is all of the food sciences, floriculture, and what else did she teach? All the things, agriculture. So last year, we said that we would boost that budget a little bit to accommodate getting started with a floriculture class, the way we had with geometry and construction and AMP curriculum before that, so that they can become self-sustaining. I will tell you, AMP is now self-sustaining. They're doing a good job of making enough money to buy their own materials. Geometry and construction, not quite there, but maybe when they finish the tiny house, they will be. So that's what the premise is with floriculture. There's a little bit extra there so that they can get their seed money and get started. And then their profits are housed in their student money account that the kids are responsible to run, and they vote and they have minutes and the whole thing. So that's why that's a little bit larger. Moving on to 1132 on page 12. I really wanted attention to about 3/4 of the way down. You're looking at the proposed 25-26 column, and that number is $227,000. And I love sports. I love sports. That's a lot of money to spend on sports. That's 2.5 teachers. So, sports are expensive. The cost of officials skyrocketed because we can't get people to do it. And we've discussed that at board meetings. But those rates are going to go even higher over the next 2 years to come, to where they're making $100 a game. So schedules may get less to accommodate that fee. But that it is expensive. And then also in 250, we're spending, that would be things like All of the extra duty contracts for specific advisors, the special education stipends during our bargaining agreement is for the band director when he gets a band going at basketball games. Not all of that is spent because they're not in place yet, but the position is out there, and that is 117,000. And those are just, it also pays a stipend as negotiated to college coursework teachers. There's actually kind of a lot in there. If you want more detail on what that entails, I'm happy to talk with you when you want. Good programs, but expensive. Then you just go through the principal budget, the care and maintenance of the building. It's pretty straightforward from there. Moving through the high school to the next fund is 105, which is pathways. And so we had some discussion. It's page 1, but it's for the end of the packet. We had some discussion earlier this year about what pathways can do. And pathways grants are, you have to have a certain number of classes in a row to gain points, so to speak. And the teacher has to be licensed, and there's all these criteria. And then every student that takes those classes makes a tick mark and money into the programs. And there was consideration of splitting those, but then there was no way to advance kids to get those 3 courses necessarily. It was going to split that money. And the money is not that much. There's 21,000 in it this time because of some carryover, because the state took a long time to get it paid last year, so they gave us some grace. But usually the new money coming into that is about $8,000. So I think John Townsend spent some this year on some equipment to get the grade learning and some things like that. Haley has used it to take kids to some competitions and to buy a fertilizer injector for the greenhouse. So those are the kinds of extras they use for that. But it does involve both programs, and I just wanted to make that they do share that. 106 is the old rebuy grant. You don't need to worry about that. It's over. So we'd be on to the next packet, which is the elementary school. These are grouped differently. They're grouped in S. Miller K1. The state tells me so. So even though they're not in Miller anymore, it's K through 3 that's involved in this first page. And they're all of those classroom teachers except PE and art are in 050 general instruction. So you can see that there's 6 proposed FTE there. I had to do some moving to fit people in the budget. And then if you look at the second page, there's a grouping of $62,000 for English language arts. That is a part of the integrated plan that we talked about at the board meetings, and that is for literacy, early literacy. And that goes in the general fund because it's paid through state dollars and it doesn't have to be reported outside of. But we do have to do a lot of extra reporting for that money, and it's pretty simple how it's being spent. It's not a ton of salaries, but there is one educational assistant in that because we're calling that high dosage tutoring, so that those K-1-2s get a lot of extra reading help. So that's what that is.
Did the cost of healthcare double this year because we added more staff, or?
It changed because of the allocation of the FTE, yes. Actually, the rates haven't even come out yet. But that we, as you know, we negotiate to cap that. So it's an extraordinarily high number at $21,000 per person next year. And that's $1,750, I think, a month for their healthcare benefits. It's horrific. So that is a large number, but that changed because I moved people in budget. Good question. Going further into that, you get to the 456 building, and it's structured the exact same way, except they don't consider 6 to be early. So those are just basically the teachers in those grades, the associated educational assistants, the maintenance people. Anything that's associated with the Hutchinson building physically is in that budget. Okay, any questions on that? 15 minutes, Kathy, I got this.
No, that's fine.
The next packet is all of our federal money. So because we are unsure what's happening at the government level, I can tell you there has been no inkling in anything I've read or seen that is going to reduce our. Some other programs, yes, but we didn't get money for those anyway. So this packet is Title I funding, some other title funding that's grouped together, and small rural schools money that funds both a reading and a math specialist. So there's several funds here, but they're not significant amounts of money, but it does fund 2 full-time people in this next packet. And also our IDEA funding, which is for special education, is in that same packet. It is federal money. They aren't talking about touching that yet either. So we shall see. Any questions about that? That's it. This entire packet is 3 people. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. The next section is again with the integrated plan. And the first page, Fund 251 Student Investment Account is funded with CAP tax dollars, which is the corporate activity tax. That's, I think that potentially we're going to see reductions. That if there is no activity, their corporate won't be paying that tax. So this fund will go down. It's already gone down. Expected to be. So I think we'll be fine in next year's budget, but look for that to change over the next 2 or 3 years, and we'll have to roll some of the costs of these wonderful programs back into the general fund. So that's my gloom and doom on that, but it funds our student safety officer, our school resource officer, and that contract, you'll see it moved. It was at 0. I'm still on the first page. That's because it used to fit in the high school success grant, and it no longer fits there budgetarily. There's not enough money in it, so I moved it to here. And that contract went up from about 17,500 to 29. So beyond that, we're talking about school success. What is Rondi's title? Student success coach. She's just funny. She's, I don't know if you guys went to literacy night, but wow, just wow. So that is a successful program. The other thing that is partially funded here is part of the AMP program for geometry or for algebra. Then there's an elementary teacher is funded here, which again, that, some of that could be what gets reduced through attrition of those students moving up. If this fund goes down, if it doesn't go down, we will always keep those classes. Physical education, so we have an elementary PE specialist in this budget. And that had to do with the state saying how many hours of PE. One teacher, K-12. The next section is Fund 252 High School Success. That is basically one teacher now. That money has reduced over the last 2 years. So it funds John Townsend, our CTE program that is doing robotics, geometry and construction, a welding class, and a woodshop class. So that is where you will find his supply budget in that did get reduced on the very last page. It was $9,000 this year based on salary and benefits for next year, and have reduced his supplies down to 6,000. So I have some ideas about that, and we can stretch it a little bit because we just know John and he doesn't need our insurance. So I have in the past let him flex his half of his insurance that he doesn't give me carefully and supplies and all those like that. Next section is outdoor school. This entire font that starts with Fund 253 at the top is a compilation of weird things that don't fit anywhere else. It's the Student Activities Fund, which is all of our student council money, all of the club funds, all of those different things are included in this. Small Grant Fund is Fund 276, and that is a fund that people get little bits of money, $2,000 here, $5,000 there, and I put it all in one and I keep it all separately on a spreadsheet. But it allows me to only budget one fund, which is far easier. But those kinds of things are included in this. And I think that is, the last page of that is 280, the size rate grant. That's just a placeholder. We have to carry those out until they no longer appear for 3 years. Any questions about that? The next section is just 2 pages, but they're 2 important pages. It is robotics fund 277 and geometry and construction 279. We every year commit $20,000 out of the general fund to go to the robotics program. It's very, very expensive to enter those tournaments. And then we also budget as if they're going to get a grant or 2 to help fund that. Usually those grants go directly to the first robotics? Anyway, it pays the fee. The fee to enter is $5,000 for each competition. So they typically use the grant funds to pay that, and the $20,000 from the general fund helps go build. Geometry and construction. I budgeted this in the hopes that I don't think they're quite finished this year, and kind of thought about that. So I did budget for another one or some other project that he dreams up when he sells this tiny house. That will put that money back in this fund to help start the next project, whatever that is. So there is no transfer scheduled from the general fund, but full disclosure, we may see if not this board meeting, but the June board meeting, we may have to do a resolution to increase his budget because he's over. So I think there were a lot of unanticipated equipment needs to build the project, is what I think is happening. Turns out you can't hammer nails if you don't have hammers. That's what. So we'll look at that. He and I are meeting tomorrow morning to see if we may have to do a resolution. Food service is the biggest fund that affects, or smallest fund that affects most people. We feed all students breakfast and lunch free through federal funding. Again, I've heard no word that that's going to be impacted through USDA and the nutrition. Good news for us. There's really no other story to tell there. It's budgeted. It's not self-sustaining. There is a large transfer from the district general fund. Still worth it. Always has been. Hungry kids don't learn. And after that, the packet is the debt service funds. We have 2. We have the bond payment that did our construction, and that's the first page. And that is generated through tax dollars. So I send in a levy to the county every year to pay that bill. That's straight in, straight out. Fund 301 is the first bond fund. That we set aside a portion of payroll on every salary to pay that bill. And that has probably saved us easily $1 million over the past 20 years. And so while it was expensive this year because our first rates went up over the course of the time, it was a good decision making. Kathy, you were on the board. Yes. And so that will be paid off in 2028.
Okay, so it's something like let's step over a quarter to say that.
I know. I think you might have said that actually. And so far you haven't. The last packet is your money. I should have put first, but it's resources. Tax revenue, I increased our tax revenue about $100,000 next year. It's pretty much 3% every year. Going through this, state school fund is up quite a little bit from this year's funding. And that's because I was extremely conservative this year, not because we're actually getting about, 4,058,000, so I was off almost 100,000. Next year, then at the bottom of that 5,400 beginning fund balance, that's where that 1.8 million that we're sitting on, we have currently 3.2 million in an estimated amount. You're committing more than half of it to this budget. But I do believe that, in this budget, there's at least $160,000 of savings. I budget for teachers who are here this year into next year, even though they're retiring, so that I can generate that savings. So I know that's there. There will also be, I budgeted for the high number of PERS before the 1.6 savings that they're going to give us rate relief on. So it's budgeted high. We'll save 1.6 of our PERS, but it's really $25,000, maybe something like that. There are reductions that I know I can make next year comfortably, but not a lot. Are there questions about where we get our money, how transfers work for funding?
Your total with everything this year.
9,888,000.
So we're at 9 million.
$9,888,489.
Or under than
9,888,489. If I did write a motion, if you really wanted to entertain one, but I'm not, you can discuss what you want to, I'm not in a
tax rate 5.6 for 100,000. You know what the increase percentage from last year was?
the PERS increase.
Just the overall budget increase.
Yes. Yes, I do. I think it's $400,000.
What's
Yes, I am correct.
less than 3%?
Because it was, if you look on the very last page of the resources, the column was that was proposed, it was what we adopted this year. And this year was 9,477,000, and next year 9,888,000.
We said majority of that was that the PERS, Jim.
PERS and salaries and benefits.
Okay.
Hmm.
What else you do about that, huh?
You know, if you want to be competitive, and I do, I want to keep it. And when you have that much money sitting in the bank and the audit shows it, unions get very mad if you don't spend it. And they're right. So it would be different if we were sinking it into some sort of a major project fund and said, oh, yes, but we just had a bond pass, so it doesn't make sense to sink it on line left.
Or just 4.16% increase.
Not considering it's just went up 5%.
Inflation.
It's because you were spending the hard cost of tractors and UTVs and things that were purchased that we needed and are used all the time.
And nice to be able to purchase them when we have dollars and we're not trying to squeak out.
What kind of big projects do you have coming up? You know, I mean, after your cars are done and whatever, I'm sure you have a long term.
There is one more thing in there that we didn't mention, which is the heater in the gym. was a $50,000 cost in its budget. The heater, when we did the energy loan, or it's not here, it was medical school's energy. He was not happy about taking a loan, but we put new heating in the gym and that heater, well, it's been 20 years. That loan is due also. So it lasted 18 years. So it's just tired. It's tired. And we've repaired it, I think, twice this year. We've replaced 2 furnaces in other buildings this year. Everything that didn't get touched by bond broke in the last 2 years, including the irrigation. So,
But that's the irrigation is probably the biggest project that we have in front of us this. We didn't, I didn't notice that it was such a, I didn't realize that was a problem. And I had an epiphany with the softball field this last year. And so we set aside some money so that we can touch every sprinkler head on campus and make sure it's working and functioning appropriately, as well as move some to the appropriate locations. So we're not watering things that don't need watering.
well, when we took a bunch of trees out of high school, so the sprinkler heads aren't in the corner anymore because the tree was in the corner. Right, so
I think most of all, I've been long term, like 5, 10.
I don't, yeah, I think we're gonna have to do some roof repair, of buildings that weren't touched during the bond. We just sprang a leak in our brand new roof, the high school, due to the downspout being closed because the heat tape wasn't working. They will be minor fixes, but they'll have to be addressed for next winter, but those aren't big projects. I think when you're talking, what are we wishing for? And conservatively, in my mind right now, what I'm wishing for is to be able to keep that staff at that level. I don't know that anything else is broke. Would it be nice to pave this parking lot? Yes, but kids are still gonna spend cookies and then we're gonna have potholes. I mean, there's all kinds of things we could do if we had the money. But I don't know that there's one that,
Then
I'm looking at 5 years and not worried about it anymore. In 5 years, hopefully. No problem.
But I will say with the bond, we did tackle a lot of things that were well on the radar. And then we got all of that ESSER money. And so we were able to do a lot of other things. Yeah.
I think what's gonna happen is if we don't plan, we're planning to fail. And not all of these systems need to come due at the same time in 20 years. So somewhere along the line in 5 years, we need to start replacing 5 small heaters. And then the next year we replace a boiler system. And the high school boiler isn't old by any means, but it's the oldest heating system we have because we just moved it from the old jail building into the high school basement. And in my mind, that's going to be one of them. And there will be a decision made at that time whether it's going to remain that same style of heat. Or do we invest, $500,000 into a different system? So I do think that's gotta be on the horizon, otherwise you're left with income.
And so where is that in here? Do you plan for that? It's, setting money aside for,
We don't have a major projects fund at this time.
There's contingency.
There is contingency, so we're covered for emergencies. But what we're talking about is not an emergency. You can plan, and you're right, it's something that we really should consider.
I know that some budgets will, have a vehicle fund, and so much goes in families, right, or those kind of things.
And some of that is in the maintenance budget. There's some money in the maintenance budget for those kinds of things. But
But not $1 million, and we gotta save 100,000 a year to get there. And I think that's what you're talking about, is what are those things?
Right. Right. I mean, from an outside view, things are looking great. I mean, all the projects and schools and gyms and the new concession stand, I mean, floors, everything looks fantastic. So that's why I was thinking, what is this?
how long will it last, and what's gonna be the first big ticket?
Just speaking from a homeowner's budget, this year I had to replace the washer, the dryer, refrigerator, and a stove.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of course, huh?
Yeah, so I'm looking at in 7 years, probably having to do it again, you know, but making a plan to maybe in 2 years get a new washer and dryer. Instead of then. So it's.
And I take that suggestion to heart because I do think, especially if we're gonna start making cuts to the budget over time, it's probably time to start setting aside a modest amount each year so that when that year comes.
And from being on various boards for years, I can tell you, it's gonna go like this. And you have to, because I remember sitting in this very room talking about cutting teachers and programs and they don't. So that those
That's
are.
5.5 million out of our college budget, university budget.
Yes.
So it's top.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay, so, so the next thing is, do you want another date for continued budget meeting discussion? Or would someone want to make a motion to approve the budget as presented?
Motion to approve budget.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
this is actually set.
This is the budget committee. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I felt like I knew nothing. And then I go through this and still.
Yeah, I still want to.
They laughed. Appreciate you. I'm tired of you like before. I finally felt like. I did learn. What is? On the order.
Yes.